I was in the sit room. I was in the Situation Room during Operation Midnight Hammer. How about that as a metric for a country not to mess with? The idea that we flew strategic bombers from mainland United States all the way into Iranian airspace, dropped 34,000-pound bombs on their nuclear facilities, exited Iranian airspace without even a lawn dart being launched against our bombers, tells you that you'd have to be suicidal to take on President Trump, the U.S. military, and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth.
All right, guys, good Wednesday to you. We're back to a normal work week, and we are over the hump, which is great because now you got the weekend in our sights. And as a reminder, and I don't say this just because it's my birthday, the first day of fall, that is, but we are still technically in the summer. I know everyone wants to say the summer's over, but as someone whose birthday is on the first day of fall, September 23rd, in case you're buying me a gift, it's not over. And I think at least in the metropolitan DC area, it's going to be another beautiful weekend. So I'm not giving up on summer yet. We got a great show coming your way. Dr. Sebastian Gorka is here. And obviously, as you guys know, a lot of talk about what happened in Charlotte, North Carolina. So we're going to talk about that, plus the other threats the country faces and what this administration is doing to keep us safe. I had a great conversation with the president this morning. I had some time to catch up with him on the phone. Hopefully, we're working on a date for him to come on to the show. I appreciate all of his continued support for the show and for all my efforts. He is, for all the talk about the president, I tell this people all the time, like I left in September 1st, 2017. I've now written 4 books. I was on a reality television show, and obviously this venture here. And the president has been more than generous with his time and his support, and I appreciate that. And I had a chance to catch up with him a little bit this morning about what's going on in sanctuary cities. Obviously, Tom Homan was going to join us today. We're going to lock him in for later, but obviously there's a big push to announce that next city that the president's going to send federal assistance to help clean up. And so Tom got a little busy today, as you can imagine, but he's been a very, very busy man. I saw him at the White House yesterday. He is on fire. Seb Gorka is joining us, though. This is going to be a great show. But overnight, and I did remind him, this federal judge announced that he couldn't initially fire Lisa Cook, the Fed governor, for cause, even though she's been exposed for mortgage fraud, because it didn't happen while she was on the job. This is insane. This is insane. I reminded the president this morning, I said, remember Spicer v. Biden, Mr. President. You appointed me to the board of the Naval Academy in your first term. Biden fired me and all of your appointees. We sued him, Spicer v. Biden, and the president felt very good about his case. And I think he's right. He has the authority to do it. And the idea that because she committed mortgage fraud before she officially started on the bank is insane. Like, that's not how this works. Plus, she would have lied on her forms. Anyway, I feel very good. I think this judge, which by the way, is a sorority sister of Lisa Cook's. You don't think that's a problem? Biden appointed judge, clearly conflicted. President and I talked about that for a while as well. But last night, I had gone out to meet some friends on 15th Street to catch up. And lo and behold, Secret Service is everywhere. And I'm like, I know something's going on. I know it is. And lo and behold, the president, for the first time ever, went out to dinner to a non-Trump property. He went to Joe's Stone Crab right there on 15th Street, if you're familiar with D.C. It's just up from the Treasury building. But it was funny because there's a way you go out of the Treasury building from the White House and then come up 15th Street. It's like a block and a half. And obviously, when you see that many Secret Service agents, and I've been around long enough that I know the difference between a protectee and the president, and because a normal protectee would never get what he had yesterday. Sure enough. And a lot of people were asking me afterwards, wait a second, they didn't clear out the restaurant. There were people outside. It's called an OTR, meaning it's not on the president's schedule and off the record. It's not part of his schedule. And so this happens a lot. So, for example, when he goes golfing or something, they won't put it on his schedule, but he shows up somewhere and it's a different thing. So, yes, there are people in the restaurant. I'm going to show you that in just a second. He was out there. He dined with folks and people were in the restaurant as he went in because he's cleaned up the city and made it safer. So he took J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, and a ton of the senior staff out to dinner with him. Here's what he had to say to folks.
Thank you. We have a safe city now.
Great job.
Can you imagine? We did it in 12 days, but now it's almost a month. We have a safe city. So that's good. Enjoy yourself. You won't be mugged going home, okay? Have a good time, everybody.
Right in big. Hey, thanks for that business card.
Yeah, I gave it to you.
Big
Thanks.
stuff. I like it. Thanks.
Where's your family?
They're back in Atlanta.
Oh, okay. Say hello, bro. Have a good time, everybody. Don't drink too much. Don't drink too much.
Don't you love it? You're safe. Have a good time and don't drink too much. Yeah, it was quite the spectacle there on 15th Street. I think you may see him go out some more as well, and obviously continue that effort to make America's cities stronger again. I know he teased Chicago, but he's not ready. He's going to make Chicago come to him, and I think that's important because the people there have seen now that they have a choice, and they got to watch what happened in Washington, D.C. and decide for themselves. Do you want your mayor to do nothing and to allow people to get hurt and die on the streets of Chicago? Or do you just want to ask President Trump for the help that he's willing to give you? And the president's obviously willing to do this in other cities. You can see the decision today. That's why our buddy Tom Homan is out working so hard. But he even stared down at dinner protesters, nut jobs who are in the thing. This is what they try. I mean, again, it just is so weird to me. You could tell that people in the restaurant were excited to see the president. And obviously they had no idea he was coming. So this is Washington, D.C. You're talking about playing an away game. Unbelievable. Watch what these nut jobs did inside the restaurant.
Happy to see you. Enjoy your dinner. Thank you.
Now, look, I mean, if you're watching this, if you're listening to the audio version, you can't. He's just staring at them. He's staring them down. They're literally crazy people. Free DC, free Palestine. Free DC. Are you kidding? He's made it safer for you morons. Like free. Why are you not free? You can go do anything. Yeah, you just can't commit a crime. I'm sorry. The president has ruled out people committing crimes in Washington, DC and killing people. Shame on him for keeping you safe, you moron. This is unbelievable. But then combining it with free Palestine, like, I feel bad for these people. I really do, that you're that deranged that you spend your time going out and yelling at him, free DC, free Palestine. And I love it. He's just staring him down like, okay, crazy person, go for it. Anyway, before I bring in Sebastian Gorka to break down everything that's going on in the country to keep us safe, not just in DC, but writ large, because he oversees that whole counterterrorism. Brand new book by Kamala Harris, 107 Days. There was a lot of speculation about how she would thread the needle. And I'm going to talk about it after our conversation with Seb. But I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. She went the route. The combination of how she put out this book, she attacks the Bidens, attacks all the senior advisors, and then defends herself. It's so tone deaf. That's the only word. And I will say this, the only one happy, and I don't even know if that's the right word, is Jill Biden, I think. Because Jill Biden's going around seeing, I told you this snake would get us in the back again. The same woman who attacked you, Joe, about the busing stuff. And then you chose her as vice president, and this is how she repays you. I'm telling you, this has done more damage to Kamala Harris. No one's going to work with her again. How disloyal, how unbelievably ridiculous. I'll talk about the new book and the excerpts that have come out because it sums it all up in one little excerpt. She is a disloyal, self-absorbed, politically tone-deaf individual. I got a lot to break down. But as I said, Seb Gorka is going to come up, talk to us about what's happening in Charlotte. Tomorrow, as we do, great panel discussion. Katie Miller, Stephen Miller's wife, who's at the White House. She has a brand new podcast. She's going to join the panel. Haley Correa down there doing Dan Bongino's show these days. And Rob Bluey is going to break us down. And then Friday, my buddy Seth Cashel, always fantastic with his predictions. Spot on the election last time. And he continues to talk about voter registration and the mood of these of the electorate in a way that nobody else is doing. So that's Friday for us. So a lot to do that. And then obviously next week, we got a lot going on your way. And I'm going to tell you this right now. Speaking of Kamala Harris's book, every weekend I drop a little segment that didn't fit into a show. You want to hit the subscribe and notification button now. The tease is this: Kamala Harris's book and an interview you never saw coming. That's what okay? Saturday, I think we're going to drop this. But I'm telling you, you are going to have your mind blown on what we've dropped for you this weekend. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. All right. Before I bring in my buddy Seb Gorka, there is a group that you've heard me talk about before that's just doing amazing work here in Washington, D.C. Actually, in fairness, they're here in Virginia, in Alexandria, Virginia, where I live. Concerned Women for America, led by Penny Nance. She's been on the show a bunch. They have been a leader in the cultural war, and that's what it is. It's been a war. If you're a mom, you know, again, I don't mean to minimize the role of dads, but let's face it, the moms are on the front line. They talk to other moms. They hear what their kids are talking about online. They know what's going on in the schools and with their friends. And I'm telling you, what's happening to our kids is nothing short of a cultural war. And the women at Concerned Women for America, led by Penny Nance, are at the forefront of combating this for us. They were ahead of the no men in women's sports before it became cool. Chapters around the country, making sure it leads. They've got 7 key issues that they focus on: family, sanctity of life, religious liberty, parental choice and education, fighting sexual exploitation, national sovereignty, and support for Israel. And gosh, talk about the need to support Israel during these critical times. It's nothing greater right now. And but like I said, they're fighting the war, not just here in Washington, but sprouting up chapters around the country. You can help them and get a copy of Penny's brand new book called A Woman's Guide, 7 Rules for Success in Business and Life, with a donation of $20 or more to Concerned Women for America. You just go to concernedwomen.org/Spicer, concernedwomen.org/Spicer for your copy today. You're going to learn something. You're going to help a great organization and continue to help us fight back on this cultural war that the left and the media is pushing. So go to concernedwomen.org/Spicer. All right, guys, as I said, we're over the hump. We're headed to the weekend. Before I bring in Sebastian Gorka, whether you're going to be cooking this weekend, as I do, omelets and eggs in the morning, something on the grill at night, chicken or steak, I haven't made up that mind, plus some vegetables. You know what I love adding now is this Firecracker Farm hot salt. This is so cool. You just press one little click right here. It comes down just like a normal grinder, but it's got 3 variations of pepper in it. Ghost, Scorpion, and Reaper. Hello, that should have told you everything you need to know. But I'm going to tell you, for those of you who are like, oh, that sounds too hot for me, I do love a good spicy thing. Can you imagine that? This is like a powerful burst of flavor that has just been missing from food forever. It is unbelievable. Megyn Kelly's been touting it. Joe Rogan's been touting it. It keeps going out of stock because it's a small batch American company. So they don't make massive amounts of this stuff. But when it's in stock, you rush and get it. It was sold out before Father's Day. A bunch of people tried to get it and they couldn't. It is back in stock and it unlocks flavor in anything that you put on it. Like I said, I've tried it on the eggs, some chicken, vegetables. It's great. So it may sell out again, but I'm telling you right now it's in stock. And if you go to firecracker.farm, not edu, not ed.org, firecracker.farm, and use code SPICER, our listeners get an amazing discount right now. So this is a great company. You will love what it does to all of your food. Go to firecracker.farm and use code SPICER. All right, without further ado, I want to bring in the Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council in the White House, our good buddy, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Seb, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us.
It is my pleasure, Sean. Glad to be back.
So I want to talk about what's going on with this strike on the Venezuelan drug boat. A lot of people were shocked by this. Some people, including fellow Republicans, have expressed outrage. Explain what the threat was against our country. That's what you do. That's what you monitor. What threat did this pose?
Well, very simply, a dire threat, and the exigent circumstances regarding that threat justified the action taken, and I can guarantee you it will not be the last such action. When I had my national show on Newsmax, I dedicated a whole program to the issue of the cartels, and I just decided to do the math, and I added it all up. Since the end of hostilities in World War II to the present day, we've had 103,000 servicemen and women killed in action. So that's Korea, Vietnam, Panama, Grenada, Gulf 1, Gulf 2, GWAT, Afghanistan. So in 7 decades, 103,000 killed in action. During the Biden administration's open border policies, I went to the CDC website and I found the data. It is well buried, but I found it. In one 12-month period of the open borders of the Biden-Harris regime, 110 100,000 Americans were killed by drug poisoning, mostly fentanyl. So that's the justification, that more Americans were killed by the cartels in 1 year than Americans killed in 70 years of war. They declared war on us. And to quote my immediate boss, the acting National Security Advisor, Secretary Rubio, who said this just a few days ago at a bilateral in the hemisphere, he said, "We tried the interdiction for decades. It never worked. They put a 2% margin into the cartel business model and they just wrote it off. So now we're not going to do interdictions. We're going to blow you up." That's why we're doing what we're doing.
So you kind of mentioned at the front end that this isn't the last time. Is this the new way of thinking that if you're running drugs into this country, we'll take you out?
So we are interested in two things: destroying the cartels and the gangs that we've designated as FTOs. And before that, if we can change behavior patterns, that's just as good. One of my government colleagues said recently on television as well, the president reinforced it. I think you're going to think twice about getting into that speedboat with a ton of fentanyl on it. So if they stop bringing poison to America, that's a win.
So you said FTO, that's Foreign Terrorist Organization. And by that declaration, is that what you guys are using as the justification for taking them out?
Yes, also exigent circumstances and the national security emergency that was predicated with the open borders. So just the numbers of tens of millions of illegals led into this country, the drug deaths, all of those are the justification for the president to use his powers as commander-in-chief to protect Americans from the cartels, who are now technically, as you noted, foreign terrorist organizations as well.
So there is, I know, some concern, whether it's justified or not, I want you to respond to it, about what could potentially happen if another country uses this as the justification for taking out, an American ship. So like, for example, in the South China Sea, the Chinese claim all sorts of stuff is theirs, which it's not. But if they were to say, well, the U.S. set a precedent by taking out a threat that they saw in exigent circumstances that existed according to them, why can't we now take out people who are threatening Chinese territory, or at least territory that we claim as ours?
If a nation with a representative government, not a communist dictatorship like China, perceives a threat to its citizens because a non-state actor is smuggling enough poison into their country to kill tens of thousands of their citizens, if they took action and they're an ally and partner, I don't see the problem with that. U.S. naval vessels don't carry tons of fentanyl to be smuggled into China. And there's another, geopolitical reality. Then nobody's going to do that to U.S. vessels, because we aren't even a superpower. We are a hyperpower. We have 12 nuclear aircraft carriers. You know as well as anyone the number of submersibles we have. The idea that some podunk dictatorship is going to use kinetic force against our vessels, woe betide them, because if they even consider it, we will come down on them like the hammers of hell.
And has anyone expressed, like a country, made any threat that's a sort of in the not necessarily the ally world, but North Korea, China? Are you worried about any of them using this as the justification for going after U.S. assets? And not just Navy warships, but a civilian or a maritime vessel, a merchant vessel, using that as the justification, saying, oh, well, we thought there was something on board.
Not in the slightest, especially after the incredible success of our operation against the Houthis, who were endangering U.S. vessels. We saw what happened to them. They basically surrendered. And also, just look, you're a military man. Look at the might of, the Department of War and the Commander-in-Chief. I was in the sit room. I was in the Situation Room during Operation Midnight Hammer. How about that as a metric for a country not to mess with? The idea that we flew strategic bombers from mainland United States all the way into Iranian airspace, dropped 34,000 pound bombs on their nuclear facilities, exited Iranian airspace without even a lawn dart being launched against our bombers. It tells you that you'd have to be suicidal to take on President Trump, the U.S. military, and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth.
All true. I want to move south in our country a little to what happened in Charlottesville. Absolutely tragic. This Ukrainian woman being killed, murdered, attacked by this guy that was out over and over and over again. You tweeted about it. I think, Seb, I refuse to use the phrase cashless bail. That's a left-wing made-up word. If you don't have bail, it's no bail. It's not cashless. And I think that the Democrats, I don't mean to make this woman's death political, but the idea that the North Carolina governor is using it as an excuse to pass his budget and suddenly claim that he's pro-law enforcement is an absolute despicable display of political cowardice on the governor's behalf.
Yeah, and he was rightly lambasted for that tweet that he posted after the murder of this beautiful refugee from a war zone, where he said, "Oh, well, this is why you have to support me and my budget so we can have more police." Right. This governor is suddenly pro-police. You could have 10 million police officers in North Carolina, but if you release a career criminal 14 times in a row after he's been arrested, it doesn't matter how many police you have, it is the left-wing judges, the prosecutors that facilitated the death of this beautiful young woman. Let me say it again. It is the left-wing judges, that magistrate, that words fail me when I look at the curriculum vitae of this magistrate that released this individual. That woman, I wouldn't trust her to make me a grande cappuccino, let alone run a court. It is the left-wing magistrates, judges, and prosecutors who are responsible for the death of that beautiful woman.
In your purview at the National Security Council, are you concerned? I mean, this is when you talk about counterterrorism, I think you probably think of like big things, gangs, foreign terrorist organizations. And yet here in our own country, we are releasing people who are known criminals over and over and over again. And the media says, oh, he was mental health issues. He's a criminal released over and over and over again. And the media wants to excuse this. How hard does this make your job, though? Because you're trying to think of like big threats that are coming into this country. And yet we basically have to think of who are the people that the Democrats are letting out that we have to worry about now, not the organizations, just the nut jobs.
Yeah, great question. So I was coming out of the Eisenhower Executive Building very early on in the administration, and I bumped into Elon Musk because he used to use the Secretary of War suite, which is the most beautiful part of the EEOB. And he recognized me as the terrorism guy. And Elon said, so what's the biggest threat, Mr. Terrorism Guy, to America? And I said, we're going to deal with the jihadis. We'll deal with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The biggest threat right now is 4 years of open borders under Biden and Harris, with at least 12 million people coming into the country we know nothing about. For your viewers who aren't familiar, your taxpayer dollars were used to fund an app called CBP One, which any human being in the world who wasn't American could pre-clear themselves and say, hi, I'm a refugee. They were given a clearance number. They crossed the border into America, waived their clearance number from the Biden administration, from Alejandro Mayorkas, and were let into the country, given $5,000, an Obama phone, a free phone paid for by you and me, and asked which city would they like an airplane ticket to. That's the primary threat. Millions of Americans led into this country we know nothing about, who pre-cleared themselves with no background investigation and no interrogation. Then I added to Elon, I said, but relax, don't worry, because we've got the best people on the case. We have an amazing division of labor. I handle basically the global jihadi threat around the world. That's my job as Senior Director for Counterterrorism in the National Security Council. But then, don't forget, we've got that force of nature, that man who will not be stopped, Stephen Miller, as the Homeland Security Advisor, along with Governor Noem at DHS. And then, and this is the one I mentioned to Elon, I said, and don't forget, Tom Homan, he's going to find all of the bad guys and get rid of them. And across the West Executive Boulevard, as we're walking into the West Wing, Elon shouts at me and says, yeah, Homan, he's straight out of Central Casting. So yes, it's very, very serious. but we have the best people on the case. And look at this. We are what, month 8 of the administration? 1.6 million deportations. A large chunk of them self-deportations. People who say, I'm not going to mess with Tom Homan. I'm not waiting for Governor Noem to come get me, or Stephen Miller. I want to leave right now. 1.6 million. That tells you we are getting the job done for President Trump and for the American people.
Yeah, well, if you file, you get to leave on your own terms. If you don't, otherwise you end up getting shipped to who knows where. But you mentioned
and you never get to come back ever again.
Right. That's true. You mentioned Homan. He launched this Operation Midway. Again, what I don't think is ever really fully discussed or appreciated is your role in what we're trying to do, which is to get bad people out of this country that came in under the open borders. When you look at these cities, how concerned should we be about the number of people that came in this country during the 4 years of the Biden administration that pose a direct threat to our safety?
Well, just use common sense. I see the second Trump administration as, I've labeled it already as the revenge of common sense. Everything we do is just driven by facts and common sense. Whether you say a man shouldn't be allowed to go into a girl's locker room, or whether you say a nation needs borders, these aren't ideological. They're not even political statements. They're statements of fact and common sense. So let's apply common sense to this question of how much of a threat could there be. In the U.S. military for about a decade now, we've had the function of red teaming. Next to a combatant commander, there will be somebody whose MOS, whose specialty is to be the red team officer. They are tasked to think like the bad guy. So if you're in CENTCOM, you're supposed to think like Al-Qaeda or ISIS. If you're in PACOM, you're supposed to think like the People's Republic of China. Let's red cell this for a second. When the Biden administration says, walls are bad, anybody can come in, download CBP-1 and we'll let you into the country, what does Al-Qaeda think? What do the cartels think? What do North Korean intelligence officers think? If you're a bad guy and you know your number one enemy has literally no control over its borders, you're going to flood the zones with your assets, pretending to be refugees. So yes, the threat is real, but we are dealing with it every single day.
The last thing I want to ask you about, and it's amazing that it happened and we don't hear about it, is this tragedy in Minnesota.
Yeah.
This disturbed individual goes in, kills people. And I saw an epic exchange with you and one of the media personalities on CNN. And it just reminded me that it's, to your point, your job, and I don't mean to tell you what your job is, but I feel like is to just find out what the threats are facing this country and then go address them. Right. And we won't talk about what happened in Minnesota because it doesn't fit the narrative. And it was funny because you came in and I thought it's funny. I told you this to your face, so I'll tell everyone, like every time I see the lineup of who's on what shows, I was like, Seb Gorka, CNN. That is not what's going on with Dr. Gorka. And then I stopped myself and I go, all right, Sean, it's like Lucy with the football. Don't get fooled. You're going to want to watch this interview. And you come in and CNN's got all their stats and statistics. And you said, pardon me if I don't take your CNN statistic. But why can't we have a discussion about what's really going on, the threats that we face? These issues, we saw it in Nashville. We see it now in Minnesota. I know you came with a lot of other statistics to talk about it. We're the drugs that these kids are on, the mental challenges that we have, and yet we're not allowed to have it because you can't discuss transgender. That's not supposed to be a fair topic. Why? I mean, you don't get to decide what the threats are. The president has tasked you with saying what challenges do we face and how do we meet them head on. You don't go, Mr. President, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you about this. How do we get to a point beyond what you do to acknowledge the real threats and challenges that the country faces?
Look, we've had this discussion. I think 3 years ago, we had this discussion privately, Sean, where we said, why do we even pay any attention to the mainstream media? Because they're just not journalists. They are not journalists. Brianna Keeler, who interviewed me, Jake Tapper, who, doesn't invite me back because the last time it was just too embarrassing for him. Anderson Cooper, the Washington Post, the New York Times, these are not journalists. They're hacks, but worse than that, they're propagandists. They have a narrative. They must push the narrative. President Trump is bad. MS-13 fathers from Maryland are good. Stopping the crime in DC with the National Guard is fascism, and the gangbangers should not be deported to Venezuela. I mean, this is the narrative. And let me just, what happened in Minneapolis, and I say this as somebody who's been studying jihadism for a quarter of a century and now gets to run counterterrorism for the most consequential president of the modern age. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm saying it because you're right. My job is not to distort facts. It's to analyze the threat and deal with the threat. And yes, global jihadism is my primary concern outside of the country. But Sean, when was the last time a Catholic church service with little girls and boys in the pews, when was the last time that was shot up by a member of Al-Qaeda?
Yeah. No.
I mean, think about Nashville, the transgender killer at the Christian school. Think about Minneapolis and Annunciation, and you're going, hang on a second, we've had half a dozen mass murders by people who were at least confused about their gender. And none of them were shouting Allahu Akbar. They were recording videos of Jesus Christ's face on a target. They were saying it's time to kill the Christians. That is the wake-up call that we need to deal with. We'll deal with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Hamas in the Middle East or in Africa. But who's shooting up the churches in America? It's been a long time since a jihadi did something, if ever, against a Catholic school mass. I don't decide those facts. That man who thought he was a woman actually made that a horrific reality. And that's what we have to deal with.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you dealing with it. And I appreciate you being straight with us. Because again, why bother if we're not going to actually talk about the real threats that we face? So that
you can't cure a sick person if you misdiagnose them. If a guy comes into you with a brain tumor and you say, here, you've got a headache, take an aspirin. What happens to the patient? Our first responsibility is to speak truthfully about the problem we are facing. Otherwise, we will never, ever heal it.
I agree. Dr. Gorka, thanks for everything you're doing. You continue to serve. I appreciate it. Always good to bump into you over there. And I'll see you soon.
God bless. Thank you, Sean. And God bless all your viewers.
Thank you. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Seb. So insightful. The guy is crushing it over there. And to hear about their priorities and what they're doing, spot on. Thanks. I always appreciate Seb's guidance and insights, especially on a day like today when you know that they are announcing these other, this additional action to go into another city. The president's trying to keep American cities safe. And one thing that's gone unsaid, by the way, just remember this, for all the talk in the media, you have a second-term president. He's not up for re-election. We have midterms coming up. What should his priority be? Helping Republicans stay in office, helping preserve his thing. He is spending a ton of political capital in deep blue cities that he will never get any credit for. Think about that for a moment, because a normal politician would say, where do I go to maximize my political chances to build my party? He's spending time and political capital in deep blue cities because he cares about American lives. He cares about these cities. Think about that for a second. He doesn't have to care. There's no votes in Washington, D.C. or Chicago or Memphis or New Orleans. He cares about ending the violence and the killing and clean cities and making America beautiful again and safe again. Not many politicians heading into a midterm would be spending a ton of political capital helping cities and areas that aren't on their political radar. But he is, because he cares. And no one will write that or say it. Just think about that. All right, before we keep going, I just want to tell you, I mention this all the time. These are my bags of bean dream powder. Look at this. This is all the cocoa cinnamon. I told you this week. Last night I was trying the brownie And then, of course, here is the peppermint. There's a ton of amazing flavors of Beam Dream Powder. If you are on a wellness journey or just frankly busy, then you know the best thing for your wellness is a great night's sleep. Beam's Dream Powder has been just a total game changer for me. I've tried in the past melatonin, reishi, L-theanine, magnesium, you name it. I've tried it. And I'm just telling you, this stuff is unbelievable. It's all natural. It tastes amazing. I would drink this stuff all day long if it didn't put you to sleep. I take one scoop, put it in some water, 30 seconds in the microwave, and then I'm out like a light and I wake up rip-roaring ready to go. This is unbelievable. And I'm telling you, you don't wake up, you don't feel foggy in the morning. I finally have found something that gets me to sleep, keeps me to sleep, and makes me feel great in the morning. The cool part is right now, Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount, 40% off at checkout. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer and use code word Spicer. Shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer for 40% off any of those flavors. I'd buy them all because you never know what you like. I am a big believer in the cocoa cinnamon one, by the way, but some people might like the brownie or the peppermint. It's really not up to me to judge. But I'm just to tell you this. Everyone asks me, it's the number one question. Do you really use your Beam Dream Powder every night? This is 100%. Every night. And when I miss it, I'll get up out of bed and go do it because it's that critical to my sleep. All right. Just telling you, it's amazing what it does. Don't go without it. Do this. All right. I got to tell you, yesterday we just talked to Seb about this narrative in Chicago. Caroline Levitt yesterday at the briefing addressed it. I want to play you a bit of what she had to say.
Today, I would like to address the tragedy that has not received nearly enough media attention, the brutal murder of Irina Zarutska. Here are the facts that many outlets have shamefully and intentionally failed to report until President Trump drew attention to it. On August 22nd, Irina Zarutska was stabbed to death on the rail system in Charlotte, North Carolina, by a savage career criminal. This is a public transportation system that many in the area use every single day to go to school and work. Irina was on the train that night traveling home from her job at a pizzeria, still in uniform from her shift. This beautiful, innocent 23-year-old young woman was a Ukrainian refugee who had recently fled her country for a chance at a safer life and a promising new beginning here in the United States of America. But tragically, a public transportation system in a major American city was more dangerous than the active war zone that she left. The president and the entire White House are praying for her family and friends during this unimaginably difficult time. But while we extend our thoughts and prayers, we must also seek justice for this crime and call attention to this heinous incident. Surveillance video of the killing was finally released to the public this past Friday. It shows the alleged killer, DeCarlos Brown Jr., pull out a knife, get up from his seat behind Irina, and prepare to thrust a blade into her neck before the released footage gets cut. This is pure evil on full display. The most enraging and unacceptable part of this story is that her death was entirely preventable. DeCarlos Brown never should have been on that train that night. In fact, he should have been behind bars. DeCarlos Brown has been charged with crimes no fewer than 14 times, dating back to 2011, including for armed robbery, felony larceny, breaking and entering, and shoplifting. Brown had previously served 5 years in prison for a robbery with a deadly weapon charge, and he had also forfeited bonds 3 different times, twice in 2014 and once in 2023. Despite all of this past documented criminal history, when Brown was arrested yet again in January of this past year, a Democrat judge, who I will add was a strong supporter of former Vice President Kamala Harris, released this insane criminal once again without requiring him to pay any bail. He simply had to sign a written promise to return for his court hearing. Think about how crazy it is to ask a career criminal, someone who by definition repeatedly breaks the law, to just sign a written promise and come back again another day. This is madness. This monster should have been locked up, and Irina should still be alive. But Democrat politicians, liberal judges, and weak prosecutors would rather virtue signal than lock up criminals and protect their communities. And perhaps most shamefully of all, the majority of the media, many outlets in this room, decided that her murder was not worth reporting on originally because it does not fit a preferred narrative. Many of the journalists in this room spilled plenty of ink trying to smear Daniel Penny for defending a subway car from a deranged lunatic in New York City, but none of those same reporters lift a finger to write stories about an actual murderer.
You think about this for a second. And by the way, I said this on X last night, Twitter, whatever we're still calling it. There's no such thing as cashless bail. There's just no bail. This is the media trying to gaslight us. Like they call it cashless bail. You heard Caroline saying the right way. There was no bail. But the left and the media want to talk about cashless bail. That doesn't make any sense. You either put money down for bail, or you don't. But they use a phrase like that to obfuscate, to gaslight you. There's no such thing as cashless bail. That's like saying it's free. It's not cashless when you go out to dinner. It's either free or you pay for it. It's unbelievable. She's absolutely right when she brings this up. Where was the coverage of it? And we now know, and for a while, by the way, I want to just show you how CNN and it played this all up. Because this is just a bunch of clips about how they addressed this attack. Take a look.
Fueling a political firestorm, how a video of a deadly stabbing in Charlotte has turned into a flashpoint as the administration pushes its crime crackdown.
People are murdered every single day, but this particular one, I'm trying to understand why this has become such a flashpoint on the right.
I have to say, some of the replies to Musk, some of the comments around this story are baldly racist.
The president and his allies are using the attack to accuse Democrats of being soft on crime.
Yeah, so the president has pointed the finger at Democrats.
Members of the Trump administration also used the video to criticize Democratic-led cities.
The president blaming Democrats for Zarutka's death.
It is Trump-aligned influencers who are posting up a storm about this case on social media.
Okay, just so we're clear. The man is on video saying, I got the white girl. This was racially charged. Democrats did let him off 14 times, and they want to blame it all on mental health. Oh, this is a mental health. 14 times this guy was arrested and let out. And you heard Caroline say it right there. He had to sign a piece of paper. I will not do it again. Are you kidding me? Why is it that we talk about all these other crimes, but when a woman, this should be something that they celebrate. She fled Ukraine for a better life. Isn't this what the media loves to talk about? But because it didn't fit their narrative, much like Annunciation Catholic Church in Minnesota last week, because it was a transgender killer. We can't talk about that. We can't have that conversation, can we? Because it doesn't fit our narrative that somehow guns are to blame and the right is to blame and Donald Trump's to blame when it's their side. And let's face it, it's their side. They don't want to cover it. They want to ignore it. They want to pretend it didn't happen. We need to call this out, frankly. We need to be clear that this is a problem. And I'm glad the White House is doing it. But you notice how CNN in particular framed this? It's the MAGA world that's making this in, the president's allies. I'm sorry, when you guys go after Daniel Penny, when you go after all these other folks, you try to connect them. But think about it. When that guy shut up a softball practice, we have to downplay that. It's mental health. It's something. When the Annunciation Church shooting happens, we can't talk about the drugs that this person was on. The issue of transgender people, whether it's the Nashville shooting or this one, like Seb was talking about earlier. We just can't talk about it, can we? But it's unbelievable how we can talk about it when it's a white person that does something, when it's a black person that attacks a white woman who is here, by the way, to flee, and it's Democratic policies and judges that allowed it to occur. We can't discuss politics. No, can't do that. It's pretty unbelievable. But that's how they want to play this up. And by the way, you notice how because initially we didn't hear the video of this individual blaming it on going after a white woman. So they said, I can't believe race could ever be a factor here. Once they found it is, they just shut up and they moved on. They gaslit us again. Anyway, another big issue that happened yesterday is there was a big revision in the data of the last year of Biden. Almost 1 million jobs. I want to play you what Scott Bessent said over the weekend on Meet the Press. Watch the pushback of what Kristen Welker said, and then we'll show you the reality. Take a look.
Mr. Secretary, the economy did add nearly 500,000 manufacturing jobs under former President Biden. In this case, since April, again, you're actually losing manufacturing jobs. Is that problematic for your policy?
Well, a couple of things, Chris. We're going to get the revisions for last year, next week. And there may be as big as an 800,000 job downward revision. Again, this would be the second downward revision. So I'm not sure what these people who collect the data have been doing. It's good. We need good data. Secondly, what we are seeing is the jobs that are being created are going to either native-born or legal Americans. Most of the jobs created under the Biden administration, they went to illegal aliens.
Well, and I think that there would be a lot of debate over the fact that they went to illegal aliens. But let's keep moving.
No. That's the fact.
No. That's the facts. 1 Besant, 0 Welker. So let's just start at the beginning. She stated as a fact that the Biden administration had created 500,000 jobs. Do you know what we found out yesterday? The Bureau of Labor Statistics admitted that they made up 911 jobs under President Biden. That's almost 1 million jobs that weren't created. They were way off. No one's talking about that today because remember, the narrative was things were getting so good under Biden, we had to keep that narrative going. We now find out that that's not true. Besant was absolutely right. And she got humiliated there. And of course, they will face no consequences. Unreal. But that's what we're dealing with, guys. You notice she stated unequivocally, the Biden administration created 500,000 jobs. No, they didn't. We now know that that was a lie. And she will face no consequences for that. Scott Besant was actually undercounting it. He said we might lose up to 800,000. It was way worse. And she pushed back and said, oh, no. I need to continue with my narrative that things are really good under Biden and bad under you. Now what? Nothing. No comments. Big crickets this morning, right? Unbelievable. By the way, I mentioned this at the beginning. First excerpt from Kamala Harris's new book coming out. I'm going to break this down with the panel tomorrow in much more detail. It is unbelievable. The book is called 107 Days. And as you recall, we talked about this a few weeks back. That is interesting in the title choice. It clearly showed that she was blaming the amount of time that she was a candidate as her loss. Well, it gets worse. She talks about that she was the worst person to make the decision that Biden should drop out. But she keeps talking about this. Listen to this. On his worst day, he was deeply knowledgeable. This is being Biden. This is what she's writing. More capable of exercising judgment and far more compassionate than Trump at his best. But at 81, Joe got tired. That's when his age showed. It was unbelievable. She said that Fox News attacked her for her laugh, to her tone of voice, to who she dated, or that she was a DEI hire, and that it was the Biden administration that just didn't defend her enough. So she talks about this trip that she took to Paris. And I played this clip before. Remember when she makes up that fake French accent and she talks about Le Plan? Well, that's it. She talks about how she was invited over to plan. She said, I said Le Plan with an exaggerated emphasis and air quotes. Fox News, the New York Post, and Newsmax went wild, claiming that I made a fake French accent. She did. That's true. This was total nonsense, she says. But the White House seemed to be glad to let reporting about my, quote, gaffe overwhelm the significant thaw in foreign relations that I had achieved. She continues in this entire excerpt to blame Biden for her lack of success. Holy tone deaf. It was unbelievable. And then she talks about her staff churn. It was unbelievable. No one wanted to work for this person. And that's literally documented up and down from her own people. And she says the first year in any White House sees staff churn. Working for the first woman vice president, my staff had the additional challenge of confronting gender stereotypes in a constant battle that could prove exhausting. It was not my fault. It's them. So unbelievably tone deaf. And as I said, tomorrow with the panel, Katie Miller will be here. We are going to, Haley Karania and Rob Bluey, we will break all of this down. Seth Keshel on Friday. Unbelievable. Big week ahead and some big guests coming up next week. Plus, as I mentioned, you're not going to want to miss this Saturday sit down that I have on this new book. Guys, thanks for being here tonight. We got a great show tomorrow. Appreciate you being here. Always go to SeanSpicer.com for the latest. Have a good night. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.